Hello and welcome to the Lou Review podcast. I'm your host, Rosa Hart. And on the Lou Review podcast, we talk about the people and organizations that make Louisville, Kentucky a great place to be. One of those people is going to be talking to us tonight. I am so excited to introduce you to Sheehan Martin. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of the Lou Review. What an honor.
So, Ray, you are proof that servant leadership isn't just a phase, it is a practice. And you started by serving in YouthBuild, and now you're the executive director of St. John's Center, which is one of Louisville's most vital nonprofits dedicated to serving our houseless neighbors. Under your leadership, the center has expanded its reach, opening Sheehan Landing, an 80-unit permanent supportive housing complex, and also recently launched a community referral tool, giving Louisvillians a compassionate alternative to calling the police on someone experiencing homelessness. And you're also a Louisville Business First 40 Under 40 honoree for this service that you've been working hard on. So it is my honor to welcome you to the Lou Review.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, very proud of the ways that we are supporting our community, supporting our neighbors at St. John Center. And our goal is to just keep filling in the gaps, right? To create that, strengthen the social fabric that is there and create the solutions that we do not yet have. So I'm very proud. We have an amazing team, an amazing village of people who make the work at St. John Center stronger. We have a lot of beautiful, wonderful people who show up to work every day, but also about 186 volunteers. So just know that the work that we do is really a reflection of the community's right values, the values that I believe really defines us, right, in terms of how we want to care for one another. So it is a joy and an honor to do right, such meaningful work every day.
Yeah. And so your work at YouthBuild was obviously with a specifically younger population. So what was the transition like for you going from working with that younger population overall to people who are experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, well, interestingly, and really tragically, what got me interested in housing, right, and homeless services was the trends that we were seeing amongst the young people that we were working with at YouthBuild. So YouthBuild, at that time, we served young adults who were 18 to 24 in most of our programs, and we did a really remarkable job in innovating, right, the education experience and contextualizing work skills, right, in the classroom and just, making vocational training something that young people could get excited about and start to see themselves in different career fields, right, than they had been presented with. So the thing that I love, the thing that brought me to Youth Build is that the agency, the model really understands, right, those kind of hierarchy of needs, right? You're not going to be successful in a classroom if your basic needs are not met. And so while we were providing a lot of wraparound services to address, food insecurity, health right concerns, all of these things to prepare, the young people for either academic or career, right, kind of success, we were seeing that more and more of the students were struggling to show up on time or, to show up with the confidence or the zest that we hoped for. And it was because more and more of the young people were in really just precarious housing situations, right? A lot of the couch surfing or just in housing that was not safe, or literally unhoused. So seeing this trend, the executive director of the great Lynn Rippey, was asked me what we were seeing in the young people, and together we said, like, let's start a housing program. So always grateful for her vision and willingness to take on a completely new book of work and to allow me to learn and lead in that space. So it was the experience of the young people, right, and their needs around safe and stable housing that got me more curious about housing and, the tragedy of what life looks like when you do not have housing at all. So we started the housing program and there was a new kind of model that HUD was putting out, this youth homeless demonstration project. So it felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity to get some resources really quickly into this community to get young people into housing. And it was working, right? It was working. While I was doing that work, actually we were doing that work. We had gotten all this new money from the federal government, from HUD, and had all of our plans ready to go. And then the pandemic hit, right? And as you know, we all remember how everything just sort of halted. There was not a lot of technical assistance available to us at that time, but we had, young people in front of us who needed housing, and we had made a promise to provide it. So we really looked inward, like we got really close to people in the community, to agencies in this community who were already doing that work. That is how I learned about St. John Center, right? I was able to call on the then executive director, the brilliant Maria Price, because, we needed help creating policies. Like, yes, we can get people in housing, but what should our programming look like,
Yeah.
once we're in housing? How do we structure leases, all of the things. And so I was able to lean on Maria Price, who just sent me everything, right? She's just like, here it all is. And that sharing of knowledge just turned into me getting more curious and familiar, right, with the work that St. John Center was doing and other homeless service providers were doing. And one day she announced and shocked the world, the community, that she was leaving and invited me to apply. And at that time, I was flabbergasted, but always grateful for that call and her faith, right, in me to do this hard thing, a lot of which I had not done before. The thing I was most excited about when I was first coming to St. John Center was the opportunity to yet again solve a big problem, right? This St. John Center as an agency was ready to be a bigger part of solutions to housing, right? We had been providing critical services to keep people alive. We were working with landlords to get some folks into housing, but as it was getting harder and harder, right, to find landlords, more people were in need. The agency said, we want to create housing for our people, and we want to look at new models so that we can move people off of the streets at scale. And so I was really excited to do that. I had a coach who said once I was a solution monster. So that really spoke to me. I was
Okay.
like, yeah, let's do that. So that's how that transition happened.
I absolutely love that title. No
Yeah.
wonder. Like, I knew there was a reason. We had a mutual friend who introduced us.
Yes.
Like, she was like, "You guys have got to be friends because it."
Yes.
And I am all about solutions. I was just talking to someone on another podcast about how frustrated I get when people just want to complain. And she said, "You mean like admire the problem?"
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, I'm not here to admire any problems. Let's
I like
brainstorm
that
some
language. That's
solutions,
good language. Like, yes, we are
right?
admiring the. I'm a, I'm going
Let's
to
not
use
do
that.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Please do. And
Yeah.
I would aspire to one day be known as a solutions monster.
Yeah.
That
I was
just
like, I've been called worse things. I was like, I'll take that. I don't know
right?
it as a compliment, but it's
It is,
certainly
and it sounds like a
it,
very high compliment.
it
And
felt descriptor.
so, can you walk us through how St. John's Center works now?
Absolutely.
So, you've been running it for how long now?
It's almost been 5 years. So it'll be 5 years in September, and they have flown by, right? Time flies when you're doing hard, right? But wonderful things. So St. John Center, this is a really big season for us. It is our 40th year anniversary. We opened up 40 years ago in April. So April was actually St. John Center's month.
Oh,
But we opened under the leadership of a sister Sheehan, Sister Kathleen Sheehan. Her order, was a part of the Sisters of Charity Nazareth. Her and Sue Speed and a lot of other brilliant folks, seeing that we as a community did not have a place for people to go, specifically men, right at that time, to go where when they were unhoused, during the day. So there were overnight shelters, but where do you go, right, between 8 to 4? And there had been a tragedy, and so they put their heads together. And again, leaning on the community, they converted the old St. John Center Church into what is now St. John Center's day shelter and the hub of our programs. So the day shelter itself is where we see most of our clients, most of our neighbors. We serve, like I said, somewhere around 3,000, right? 3 to 3,500 people a year in that shelter. And the day shelter is for men or people who identify as men, right? We only have one set of bathrooms. So
Okay.
we cannot serve everyone. So, but those bathrooms are a huge part of what what the space provides to folks. For many of our unhoused neighbors, there's not a lot of places you can go shower, right? Even in the emergence, excuse me, even in the overnight shelters, they're not always able to make showers available to everyone who is checking in. And each agency has to, we all have the things that we focus on. So we have been offering safe and clean places for people to get themselves together, right? In the morning, we pass out hundreds and thousands of hygiene items that we collect, right, from other neighbors. So again, the things that you and I need to get up, right, and feel good and go out into the world, that we can make those tools more accessible. But aside from, these tangible resources, our supportive services are intended to help people address and overcome any barriers to getting them back into housing. So we provide ID services. It's really easy to lose small pieces of paper, right, when you are between households, right, especially if you are actively sleeping on the streets. Those small pieces of paper impact people's ability to move home, right, or to go to work or to go, get health care. So we do a lot of helping people get IDs, socials, birth certificates, that document all that documentation. We provide, we have someone on our team who their focus is on recovery, about somewhere between 25 to 40% of the guests report that they have experienced or are experiencing some sort of substance right abuse or substance use disorder and want support. And when they are ready for support or when they're ready to take the next step, we have someone who acts as a liaison between our clients and all of the recovery and treatment providers. We have what is probably most important is we have housing navigators, right? And so our housing navigators, their job is to work with everybody who comes in the building and help them fill out applications, right, for new find places that are aligned with their needs. But then fill out all of those applications. And it's difficult. It's difficult work. It can be very time consuming. And it can also be very defeating. So the housing navigation portion of our work is huge so guests can meet with them, but then we also offer space for other partners to come in. So legal aid is there on a regular basis, offering services that require some require a lawyer, right? A lot of these applications for benefits, sometimes even the leases, right, require they have a lot of legalese. So we
Well,
lean on legal aid quite a bit. The Veterans Administration, they have regular office hours. Even like the public library is coming, the Medicaid MCO. So we are a hub of services. And again, the goal is to get as many people who come in the doors to get them into housing as safe, as quickly as possible. But also provide a dignified space where they can be, while they are on that journey home.
a place they can have their mail sent to there, right?
Thank you. Yes, mail, right? We are the address on record for most of those folks, right? So we collect and distribute mail for over 3,000 people, right? Both in our day shelter, but then last year we had to, or a year or two ago, we had to establish a second address for people we were serving through our outreach work. So we collect, hold, and distribute mail for a lot of our neighbors. Because again, once you get those small pieces of paper, right, when they're coming in the mail, you have to have a place that you can collect them. So it is work that we use all those volunteers, right, to manage as well. Volunteers greet the door, or right, greet people when they come in. We strive to know everyone by name. So, right, people are seen. And then we can also, right, assess what they need and make sure we connect them to the most appropriate service. I think of the shelter as like triage, right? It is a
Right.
triage center. So, yes, thank you for asking about mail. It is important. It
Yeah,
is.
it really is. I mean, working as a nurse and things like that, that's so important to be able to have that touch point of a mailing address you're talking about when you're requesting Social Security cards or birth certificates or any of this to give them the documentation to get housing or apply for assistance, they have to have a mailing address to
They
send
do.
those to. Otherwise, it's just not gonna happen.
Yes, that's right. So we are doing that in the shelter, but then also in our outreach work. So our outreach team, they're the street team, right? They go out to where people are living, right? Places not meant for human habitation. And always our goal is to connect people to shelter as soon as possible so that they are not sleeping outside, but we have a supply problem, right? There are not enough overnight emergency shelter beds to house the everyone who needs it on any given night, right? There's just not
Right.
enough.
Well,
So
it's
they
like before we started this, I think you and I were talking about how, like, the average homeless population in Louisville is around, was it 12,000 people?
12,000 people, yep, utilize services.
Right. So in that case, like, I know there's probably different like levels of this, and then there's men's and women's and children's, so they have different needs and things like that. But and you're talking about like emergency places to stay. I was like, are there places for
No.
12,000 people to sleep at night?
Not at all. And, the reality is, there's not I do not feel it is accurate to say that there are 12,000 people who are in need at one time.
Okay.
It is hard. What we as a community, we use this tool called the pit count, right? And so we try to it's point in time count, excuse me.
Okay.
Once a year, it's throughout the week, we try to quantify how many people in that period of time are experiencing homelessness or utilizing, right, services. It is the like any tool, right? It is not perfect, but it is a better representation of how many people are in need at one given time, right? So I cannot recall where the numbers landed this year, but usually there's about somewhere between 1,000, let's say to 2,000 people in that reflected in that pit count, right? Those might be people who are utilizing overnight shelters, but would also include people who are sleeping outside. So don't quote me on the number, but you can find it on the coalition. But even when you look at that number, not at any time have we ever seen that we have enough beds to account for the amount of people that we count every year. So we have a supply problem, right?
Well, yes, a supply problem, and also it's a kind of a revolving door, right? Because we're not talking about the same 1 to 2,000 people from January to January being unhoused, right? Because
That's right.
like people like you aggressively working to get them some kind of permanent housing. Like I've heard that a lot of people are coming from other cities and even other states to Louisville because we have these support systems. Is that right?
No, I reject that. It's not.
Tell me more.
That's not our experience, right?
Okay.
It is. There are times where we see, right, people coming from other communities, but they're not coming because there are so many services here. When we see that happening, it's usually people who are coming for recovery or treatment. We do have a lot of recovery and treatment beds. Again, I don't want to give you the wrong number, but like our recovery beds per capita is much higher than most communities. So we see people coming to Kentucky to access those resources. And then, for various reasons, when they exit those programs, typically when they're unsuccessful in the program or the program ask them to leave, then we see those folks, right, utilizing homeless services. But I always just invite people to think about, right, how hard it is to actually pick up and relocate.
Oh, for
And, and most people want to live in the communities, right, that they know, right? They want to be close to their mothers, right, or close to their loved ones. We do not see much data, right, to justify, right, that thought, but it is a something that we hear, right, and it is
so is
easy for
that so does that mean that those 1 to 2,000 people are Louisvillians
those are
who have been
Louisvillians.
living in the community and now they just don't have housing where they did in our community before?
Absolutely, absolutely, and again, there are always outliers. There are people who come, right, from rural Kentucky, right? I have a couple of folks that I'm holding in my heart right now, where they were in a more rural areas and did come right down the road thinking that they would be able to find housing at a quicker pace, right? Because, Louisville's a bigger city. They should have more resources. And typically what they find that is, yes, while there are more resources, there are also more people who are looking for those resources. But we do not see a great deal of people coming from other states. We do see, refugees, right, when they move in, especially, here in the last couple of years, right, where there were some political wars going on, or more people were coming again to utilize services that where there were not enough. We see those folks, right, coming in and provide services, looking for services, but we don't see a ton of folks coming from California, right? Or
Right.
ton of folks coming here, right? Just because of the resources we have. And, just as I've been learning more about some of the kind of the ways that communities are funding homeless services, I will say we are making a lot of progress, but we are not the top notch, right? It's not the community. There's more that we can do.
Let's take some time to brag about the Sheehan Center,
Yes.
okay? Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Yes. So Sheehan Landing is an expansion of our third program, right? So we have shelter, outreach, and then permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing is for people who have been chronically homeless, which that is defined by if they have been on the streets for a full year, right? More than one time. So, or at a consecutive time, or right in they have come back to homelessness because they probably need more services or more support. So I digress. Permanent supportive housing is for chronically homeless individuals or people who are living with disabling conditions. So again, folks who can live independently but are going to need some support to maintain right housing and stay safe, right, and yeah, and move forward uh, with whatever their goals are. So since 2008, the agency has been providing supportive housing, but we've used a scattered site model, which just means we're always looking for landlords. All right. So we have a pool of folks who are referred to us through a use of this clinical tool, and our partners at Phoenix Healthcare. It's called the Common Assessment, right? The Common Assessment is a vulnerability index, and to be crass, it measures someone's likelihood to die if they do not get housing within a year. And then that gives them a score. And the people who score the highest on that are referred to permanent supportive housing. All right. Uh, that tool is important because there were so many folks who were on that list who qualified for and needed permanent supportive housing, but there was not an existing housing. Right? The stock itself did not meet their needs. Right. So that's what inspired the agency to say, we need something new. And that is what Sheehan Landing has become. So Sheehan Landing, as you said, cited earlier, it's 80 units, right? One bedrooms. And again, the folks that live there have been either living on the streets for a very long, right, period of time. One of our residents has been on the streets for 12 years, right? Can you imagine, right? And then we have folks, from I think our youngest resident, I want to say he's 23, right? Our oldest resident is a 83-year-old, very sharp-witted young lady who our outreach team found, pardon me, living in an encampment. Living in an encampment. She's one of the folks I was thinking about when I mentioned how people do come from the outskirts, right, or from more rural areas. We found her living in a place not sanitary, not safe. She was living with dementia, right? Her memory was failing her, but she also was losing her eyesight, right? So outreach had spent a great deal of time helping get her ready, right, for housing, so that she could move into a place and live, with some independence. So it's a wide array of folks that we serve there, right? And the only commonalities are either that they qualified for permanent supportive housing. So it is staffed 24/7. We provide some case management, right? So everybody has a case manager or peer support where they are working with and working towards their own individual goals, right? When people move into housing, in permanent supportive housing, the first thing that most people are trying to do is take better care of themselves, right? They have these exacerbated, right, health issues that they've not been able to get addressed. And so our case managers are figuring out how to get them connected, right, to whatever type of care that they need. We are trying to grow now to provide more of that clinical care, specifically around behavioral health needs, to do more of that in house. We're always looking for partners, right? Always looking for partners, specifically partners who've got like cool things that they could come and do to engage the residents. We've been open a year and it's flown by, right? So we have a lot of ways that we want to continue, right, to see the community shape out so that the residents feel just more and more right connected to this physical space and to each other. But yeah, we are a year in and it's a beautiful thing.
It is so inspiring to hear about and to be able to give a place for stability for these people who maybe they'd applied to every assistance known to man and that just wasn't enough for them. Like
Yes.
you said,
Yeah.
bless her heart, a lady who can't see and has dementia. Like,
You
do you
know,
have people who have like live-in caregivers with them in these units?
we do. We have a handful of residents who have a live-in aid currently. We've got another handful who that is going to be a part, right, of their health journey. We're just working through, working through the system to get those things set up and in place. But yes, we do have some live-in aids there. Yeah, and the thing I would hate if I forgot to mention one of the most important parts, right, of the facility and the design of the single site housing, is that there's on-site medical care, right? There is a wellness suite and a health care and a health screening room where currently Phoenix Healthcare, again, who is our partners, they provide health services at no cost to people who are unhoused. So they are our partners. They send out clinicians throughout the week, and people can get some of those, get some of their medical needs addressed. We are really trying to ramp up, right, the on-site medical supports that we are providing in this next season. But that's a huge part, right? The idea is that if someone is has a lot of health need, a lot of concerns or aches
Yeah.
and pains that often kind of set in right after you've had a chance to stabilize. That instead of the case managers having to help you get to and from right doctor's appointments, you can just go right downstairs. Right, there are other like consult offices where other clinicians or just other partners can come in and provide services in that same way. So, like legal aid comes to the day shelter, legal aid also comes to Sheehan. So, we're pulling partners in again, looking for partners always, right, who can be a part of this community. There's a lot of magic, right, that is happening, and so much more to come.
What other medical support would you like to see there in the
Yeah,
near future?
more. It's really
Just
more of that
putting it out
mental
there.
and yes, more support around mental health and behavioral health. We knew that there's a need. We knew that there would be a significant need. We trust and are seeing our partners hold some of it. There's more right to be done. There's more to be done there. Oftentimes, even though we're staffed 24/7, the the demons, right, for lack of better words, often start working on people at 3 in the morning. And it's hard to provide a the most effective right response right, to address someone's concerns at 3 in the morning, right, with the team that is there. So we're just trying to figure out right how we can respond with a little more urgency to some of the challenges that people have when it gets dark and when it's quiet, and they are experiencing this new normal, right? And ultimately, it's a great thing for them, but just with anything in life, it takes time for people to adjust,
Yeah.
even to good stuff. So it's not the best articulated point, but if if you are out there and have a solution that you think our folks might benefit from, reach out and we can work through it. We can certainly work through the needs together. I know the case managers have a list, and will be better prepared to articulate what type of help and support that they'd like.
Yeah. Well, and you've also developed or utilized a new referral tool where people don't have to call 911 if they see someone who is homeless and want to get some help from them. What is that and how does that work?
So that is our outreach referral tool. And
Okay.
so it was designed to mirror what the 311, right? What Metro's 311 line uh, can do. So for years, we had been encouraging our neighbors to, if you see someone who needs help, call 311, right? They go on this kind of on the citywide list, and we can make sure that they get services. As of late, right, we were noticing that there were more and more encampments that were being cleared. And while, we're not naive to the fact that, you know, people want and deserve access to, right, public spaces, we also understand that there are very few places where people can go, right? And it's, especially the emergency shelters are full. We do not have any sort of sanctioned places where people can camp. And so it is our job, right, to help people stay alive, right? And to find some sense of stability. So when we see an encampment, which is really, it's not the best language. When we see someone who has made a home for themselves, right, in a place using tools and resources that they've been able to piece together, we acknowledge the amount of right hard work that goes into that. We acknowledge the fact that that is that person's home, and so we try our best to shield them and for it to stay intact, right? We were seeing that more encampments have been happening. Excuse me, more encampment clearings have been happening under the new administration. Again, very much aligned with kind of federal policy right now. So we said, what can we do, right, so that we can encourage people to call without fearing that that call, right, is going to trigger an encampment clearing. So, and it's been a great way for us just to get to know the community better, right? And for people to know us better, having that direct communication. People, will sometimes use the tool, but still, our folks will call and say, I see this person, these are my concerns. What can you do? And that's a good opportunity, right, to share with them how we can. Wait, what services we can provide, how we will approach that work, because then oftentimes they are better equipped, right, to be good neighbors and advocates for, right, the unhoused themselves. So we are seeing calls or referrals, if you will, come from all 26 Metro Council districts. Something that we have always believed is the case, right? That it's all across Louisville, right? We have people experiencing homelessness, but having that data and seeing it ourselves has been very interesting, right? And we get to respond a lot right quicker, right? We're seeing those calls come in, and usually within 48 hours, and I'd say 24 because the team is so committed, right? And they move with a sense of urgency all the time. But at least within 48 hours, we are able to go out there, right? Identify that person. The more information that we get about what it is that you see or where you see a person located, what kind of clothes they have on, the more effective we can be. But it's been a great expansion, right, of our work, and really just a better way for us to work together, right, as a community to lend people a hand.
Definitely. And something that I think a lot of people can relate to, especially in Louisville, like we have 3,000 different nonprofits in Louisville. This is a giving city. And
Hmm.
Catholic Charities has led the way in a lot of things like the refugee ministries you
Yes.
mentioned. But then we have a lot of panhandlers, for example, on the streets with their signs asking for help of any kind or money. And a lot of people want to help but are afraid to give money because they don't want to help them buy something that's not actually going to help them, right? So a lot of people will put together packets. Like I know I've been part of like putting together packets of like socks and deodorant or soap and different things that are, constructive along with like some snacks or whatever and giving that out
Yes.
instead because it just hurts your heart to drive by them and not help them, not give them anything, right? But, my friends and I were discussing the other day, like, is that even useful? Do they have so many socks from everybody giving them socks?
No, I mean,
Like,
when you walk on average, right, and the data says that a unhoused person walks on average about 10 miles a day, right? And you think about it, because like even the day shelter, we are focused on getting people into housing. We do not serve food, right? Sometimes people will bring food to us, but we have celebratory days and can hand out snacks, but we don't serve right breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So folks got to walk right back to one of the places that they can get food. When people want to get to, I'm going to go on this whole long tangent, all to say, those items are always right well utilized. I cannot think of a time where we've had too many socks. Underwear are often not talked about, but underwear go a right play a big part in hygiene, right? Your sense of dignity, having clean undergarments, as laundry is not a service that most of us are providing, right? Just because of the amount of need. So all of those items that you mentioned, as well as underwear, are things that we are always collecting from, right, good neighbors like yourself and getting out. So we do discourage panhandling for the reason, only because of safety. Really, it's incredibly unsafe for the unhoused. We see a lot of, I won't say a lot, but we see too many, right, of our neighbors getting hit by cars and just, right, being in that standing on the side of the highway asking for money is just not a safe way, right, to make ends meet. But we understand people do what they have to do. But yes, if you people want to contribute, if you want to do some good, right, to support your neighbors, we definitely encourage that you reach out to us or any right of these amazing agencies, right, doing this work. We can always use those supplies and get them out safely to the people who need them most.
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for that because, sometimes when you see it, but you're not in it, it's hard to
Mhm.
know how to help most effectively, right? So, and going back to the referral tool, what is the number that people can call besides 311 to reach
Yes,
you?
yes, yes. So the tool itself is a website, right?
It's a website.
It is linked on our website,
Okay.
on the Saint. So if you can go to stjohncenter.org and just click the referral tool. If you are right an Avenger, you can download that. You can save the website on your phone. We've not yet got to an app, right? We are hopeful that one day, right, if there's a need, that we can turn it into an app. But St. John Center's number, right? People can always just call us directly and ask to speak to outreach is 502 568 3498. I do need to fact check myself because we've got more than one number now. And
Okay.
sometimes now we have Sheehan Landing,
Well,
which has a different, phone number. So I need to double check that embarrassingly.
no, you're fine. And I can just like cut to the part where you say it. So that's
Yes,
totally
thank you. So 502 568 6758 is St. John Center's number. And if it's about someone in need, where you want our outreach team to go to, just ask for outreach. But also, we have amazing volunteers and staff who are answering the phone and ready to direct people right to the service that is right needed most.
awesome. So I am so thankful to hear about all the great work that you are doing and the difference you're making for these people and giving our neighbors a place to stay and to rebuild their lives. There's so many amazing organizations doing their different pieces of this. And so thank you so much, Ray, for your part in all this and your passion for it that just really shows through. And that's who needs to be doing it. Somebody who cares.
Yeah, well, thank you. There's a lot of people right there to care about. It's the most rewarding work I've ever done, right? If you're ever having a bad day, going into the shelter is the best pick me up that you can find, because it's hard to look on, right, to human despair and it not bring you down until you start to talk to the folks. And when you experience the compassion that they are showing to each other, the ways that they support one another right through these hard days, to just there's so much joy in a place where you'd expect the exact opposite is really remarkable, right? Nothing short of miraculous. The resiliency that people muster and the way that they keep themselves, each other, and us, right, encouraged is it's such a gift, right? It's such a gift. So I'd get more than I give, and I think most of the people who are a part of this community would agree.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. And I will definitely include the links with the phone number and the website in the show notes so that if anybody's
Thank you.
listening to this and they're like, oh, I need to go there, they can just tap on it in the show notes. And if
Yes.
anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way? Should they find you on LinkedIn
Yeah,
or?
they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not the most active on social media, but they can find me or they can call me. Also call the center, and they will give out my direct number. I'm sure I do not mind. I love to hear from folks who want to right to take part. And specifically things that we are looking for in this season. We are looking for partners who'd be open to providing some shelter space themselves, right, during those really cold months. The one thing I did not touch on is last year, for the first time, we turned the day shelter into an overnight shelter. Because again, as we were saying, there's not enough shelter spaces in the middle of February. It's a
Yeah.
deadly problem. So for the first time, we opened up and created an emergency shelter, but we also worked with Grace Emmanuel Church, right, who said that they wanted to do the same. And so it was a new opportunity to train, right, this group of folks who wanted to do more, to train them, to teach them some of our best practices, but help them turn their space. They had a basement that they weren't utilizing, and they said, we can sleep 10 people here at night. And so we're wanting to do more of that. We're like, how many other churches are out there or community centers are out there with space and opportunity and a desire to do more? We'd love to talk to you and walk you through it and support you through it. We're looking for more employment partners. There's been some really big shifts again with federal policy where even if you are unhoused, where that would automatically qualify you for Medicaid, right, specifically, or SNAP benefits, that alone is not enough anymore. There is a work requirement. It is challenging, right, to maintain work, though we see a lot of people trying it, right, and a lot of people succeeding at it, right. Just it is challenging, but it is hard, right, re- to maintain regular work when you don't have a place to sleep at night. So we're in a season of innovation, right? We'd love to talk to some big employers, right, who would be willing to collaborate to make work, right, more accessible, but also to utilize some of these talents. Right? We have a lot of talented folks. Especially, amongst our men, a lot of the men who have found themselves unhoused came from jobs, that required them to use their hands, right? And we see people who fell off a ladder, right? Lost a paycheck because they weren't able to work. They still have that talent, they still have that passion. They found themselves in a season of loss, right? How do we get more folks connected to work? We are all looking for volunteers, right? Specifically on the weekends. We love weekend warriors, but there's a lot of meaningful ways that the volunteers contribute to our work. Reach out to us, right? And of course, we're always receptive and appreciative of any financial support, right? People can send our way almost half of the money, right, that we use to do this work. We we raise it in our community, right, from good neighbors who say we'll have a little less, right? So these folks can have a little more. So, anyways, right, we are
So
appreciate collaborations.
if an employer is listening to this and wondering, like, what is the work requirement for Medicaid? Is it
20
like a
hours.
20 hours
It's
a week?
20 hours a week, yes. And that is the big picture, the thing that we want to start setting up solutions, right, to make that work more accessible. But we do just have plenty of guys who are just looking for work, right, in
Right.
general, not so please, if you have some opportunities, reach out. We love to connect folks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ray. This has
Yeah.
been so illuminating. And for those of you listening, if you know of another mover and shaker in Louisville who is making our community a great place to be, please point them my way because I'd love to spotlight them. And I'll see you in the next episode.